hotties, welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I'm Blaiden Kirk, joined as always by my two favorite co-hosts of all time, Matthew Spawnhour and Theo Ashton. Today we are ranking our top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, and if you haven't seen one of our top 10 ranking episodes before, the way we do this is we each put together our own list, and then we use a ranked choice voting formula to calculate the consensus Stay Hot list. And we'll put out a graphic for that as well on social media. So if you don't want to sit through the whole episode, but you could still catch the full list eventually. But before we get into that, how are you guys doing on this wonderful Wednesday evening?
I'm doing well. A new pope is getting elected as we sit here and record this podcast.
Be done by the time we're recording?
We don't know. The conclave could take a long time. And I think that when a pope gets elected, it's one of the coolest world events to witness. This is fire. A bunch of guys go into this church and then they're going to billow smoke out the chimney when like a new leader of the Catholic Church gets announced. I'm like, this has... I'm not Catholic, so it really doesn't matter to me.
I agree with you. It's a cool process.
It's a cool process.
I've never paid attention to it, so...
More things should be decided this way. With this pageantry, the smoke, that's really what makes it.
We gotta.
Yeah, I've been getting TikTok clips of Pope movies all week, so I'm primed and ready, man.
We got to do the Stay Hot top 10 lists the same way they announce the Pope.
Chimney.
We kind of do. I think there has to be a consensus, right? Or maybe God tells us it's divine. This is a divine quarterback top 10 list. This is not to be argued with.
It's true.
No, it's not divine. No higher power told me anything.
Well, no, did a higher power tell you to pick Justin Herbert over Joe Burrow video in our Burrow versus Herbert video?
It must be because
no higher power. That just came from my brain.
Wow.
And mine only. In fact, there was a higher power telling me not to, but I ignored him.
A higher power named Matthew Spawn.
What? Matt?
Yeah, you didn't know Matt's actually.
That's divine. Saint Matt.
Divine. Saint Matt.
Bro, I did not know that.
How are you doing, Matt?
I'm all right. I kind of want to get into the Pickens trade before
we do have to talk about
the top 10.
And even maybe more important, Gabe Davis getting cut by the Jaguars,
And Gabe Davis getting cut by the Jaguars.
I think the Pickens trade felt pretty obvious. Like bringing in DK Metcalf, who is a very similar archetype guy, giving him a big contract, having no serious option at quarterback. Like it felt like the only reason they would do that would be either if they were to bring in Rodgers, and then it's like, well, now you have two guys who could be really, really dangerous vertically. But the only way they would be keeping Pickens around would, I think, be if they planned on extending him, right? And to just let him walk for nothing at the end of this year would feel like a mistake.
You'd get the comp pick.
That's true.
The only thing. So I'm sure the third feels a little... Probably not, I'd say. Probably not. A third-round comp pick is pretty rare to get handed out. And with Pickens, if he would have played in Pittsburgh this year, I'm sure he would not be the primary deep threat anymore, and he wouldn't finish with 547 yards off vertical routes.
He wouldn't finish with a ton of yards because Will Howard would be throwing Jason Rudolph.
Yes.
The offense wouldn't help. No. I mean, I thought this was kind of an obvious play for the Cowboys, too. You had to have another receiver in there. You couldn't just roll out there saying, well, CD's going to get quadruple teamed every single play, and we're going to struggle because of it, and the offense is going to be limited, and it's not going to be better than... Like, you can't do that. That can't be your strategy. So I think going after Pickens, who is a great player, in spite of maybe him being on a 1 year and him being like, maybe having some like off the field stuff that people are concerned about, he
has on the field stuff.
It's more
right. But yeah, I'm sure that there would be friction.
Not play related, but yes,
there would certainly be friction with him and DK in the same room and filling kind of the same role. it is very hard for me to imagine that Pickens was going to match his output from previous years with DK in the room. I mean, they were number 2 and 3 in yardage off vertical routes in the league last year. And very seldomly do you see two teams at the top of that list twice close together. You just kind of need one guy to take the top off and then another to exploit the underneath space is ideally how you want your wide receiving core to work. And so with Pickens, he is kind of a one-trick pony, I think. He's a really good contested catch artist down the sideline. He's not as good after the catch or running the full route tree, I think, or, even consistency with his hands, working over the middle and things like that. So there would be friction if DK just kind of came in and stole a lot of his production. And I think it makes sense to move him now when you know that the third is the value. Certainly you could have cut him. And if he just had a monster season, maybe that comp pick would have been a third, but it would have been a third even in 2027, maybe. And it's probably also not going to be a third. So you get a little bit of stability there. Knowing what your slot is going to be with him. You're not going to have to pay him the extension, which we already knew as soon as the DK trade happened. And you're absolutely right, Matt. The Cowboys, they got to get someone outside of CD. I mean, watching Dak for this video that we're about to make here, it's a joke how little separation of the other Cowboys wide receivers have.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bad. It's really bad how their number 2 and number 3 are just in terms of like getting what they need to get done.
Yeah, it's man and the safety bracket CD, and someone else has got to win. And Pickens isn't even the best separator, but at least he can make the contested catches. He's special at one aspect of playing receiver. Yeah,
demand something, right?
And if he doesn't get it, he can win in some way or another.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it kind of just made sense for both sides. I know some people are saying this trade kind of sums up the mistakes that both of these organizations make.
Which it kind of does.
I don't know. It kind of does, but I don't know. I think it's kind of.
How does it sum up the issues that the Cowboys make?
Well,
I guess just that they need to.
It's not necessarily summing up the mistakes that the Cowboys make, but it's more summing up the mistake of like I saw someone say you never buy receivers that Tomlin is selling. Like historically, Antonio
what's
Brown,
the sample size
Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster, like it's. I don't know how high the sample rate is, but it feels like
it's like 4 dudes maybe. I don't know.
Mike Wallace get traded? I can't remember. I do think, well, it's a 1-year rental, you haven't solved your receiver problem. And now you're kind of in the same situation as the Steelers where you've got this player who is probably going to demand to be overpaid in free agency. And he's just not quite worth it for a variety of reasons. So you're giving up draft capital for someone you might lose in a year. That's kind of the downside with it when they didn't just fix the problem in the draft. They didn't take like a Matthew. So, I mean, it's not a huge issue because, maybe Tyler Booker is really good. And now you get this receiver who's also good and it all just works out. Like, I like the move for Dallas without a doubt, but,
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be high on the Cowboys next year, but I'm certainly at least interested in them in a way. Like before they made this, I'm like, well, I think I know how the offense is going to go. I think I got a pretty good idea how this thing's shaping up. So,
and now I can tweet out, what if they win the Super Bowl? And it's
there we go.
There we go. But let's get into this top 10 quarterbacks consensus list. I just went in and made sure all of the names are correct because I had that issue before where if something's named incorrectly or if we're missing a name in the list, it throws off the whole count. But we'll start off with our consensus number 1, work our way down the list until we get to our consensus number 10. And maybe we'll talk about some of the honorable mentions as well. But starting off with number 1, same as every year, Patrick Mahomes. Unanimous. Our number 1, 2, and 3 are all unanimous selections here. So Mahomes number 1, not a shocker. But I do think that in the grand scheme of like NFL fan bases, they might be a little surprised to see Mahomes up here just based on.
Think so.
You don't think so? I feel like a lot of people might put Allen or maybe even Lamar above.
I don't think it's an unreasonable, like it's hard to completely say it's ridiculous after like the years that Lamar and Allen had to be like, they can't possibly be number 1. I'm a little surprised that Theo, I'm a little surprised you didn't go with like Lamar or Allen at 1. But I think overall, like the average fan would probably agree the guy who has like 17 playoff wins and 3 Super Bowls being at 1, while also, playing great football.
Mahomes is the one guy I'll accept the playoff resume for. There's
That's
no one else comes close.
I was so ready for battle with you with this. This is like the number one thing I'm like, he's not going to have Mahomes at 1. And I don't think it's crazy, but I'm going to have to be ready for it. But yeah, like Mahomes is clutch though. He is. It is a thing that exists. And when it comes down not only to big moments in the playoffs, but big moments in the regular season, he comes through at a rate that a lot of other guys don't. And the reality is that like his offense, the system around him, and like the supporting cast was just pitiful this year. Worthy started to come along towards the end of the year, sure, but before that, I mean, it's aging Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice being out. I think there's a good chance that this next year, it could be a lot better. If Worthy can pick up where he left off and Rice picks up where he left off, they'll have legitimately like a good receiving core that is like 16 or higher in the NFL rather than, being what it's been recently, which is among the absolute worst. I mean, bottom 5 for years now.
I mean, Watson has been one of their top weapons over the past few years. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And there's no run game. I mean, Pacheco probably averaged under 4 yards a carry last season. So certainly so did Kareem Hunt. Mahomes ended up accounting for a higher percentage of the Chiefs' yardage than Lamar and Josh Allen, despite all of their rushing prowess. Like, it is Mahomes. It is Mahomes. And in the playoffs and the back half of this year, I think he was playing at such a supreme level from the pocket. I think his anticipation was absolutely next level, getting the ball out as soon as he hits the top of the drop to wide receivers who aren't even close to looking. Like I think he even took that up a notch in this playoff run to beat the Texans and the Bills on the way to the Super Bowl. He's pretty fantastic. He obviously has all the out of structure ability that you could possibly want. With all that anticipation from the pocket, he's just a proven winner with the best numbers by far in the playoffs, the most great performances. Really the only guy with a sample size where I'm even confident in evaluating his playoff performance. It's Mahomes is great and everybody else I'm not sure, really.
Yeah. Stafford's pretty good.
Stafford's pretty good too, definitely.
Hurts is pretty good.
Yeah, but it's just not over the amount of years that Mahomes is at. I mean, he's already second all time in playoff wins or something like that, maybe third. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So he's easily number 1, and I do think he's still in a tier by himself. Matt, I know you say that it's not crazy to put Lamar or Allen. You are muted, by the way. I know you say it's not crazy to put.
I don't think
Jackson
it's crazy to put Lamar or Allen at 1. I don't think that's insane. I still think it's Mahomes, but I don't know. You do have to be a little bit short-sighted with guys. It's like looking at just this last year in terms of production when all of these guys have been great for super long, and maybe you got to kind of balance out the ebbs and flows here a little bit was my thought. So I don't even know if the tier on its own or with other people is like an argument worth having. I got Mahomes at 1.
Yeah, that's fair. Theo, I will say Kareem Hunt, 3.6 yards per attempt. Isaiah Pacheco, 3.7 yards per
attempt. Exactly.
So yeah, you were not far off there at all. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, number 2. I'm honestly surprised that neither of you put Josh Allen above Lamar Jackson here after Allen won the NFL's MVP award.
You're saying Lamar is unanimous number 2 amongst the 3 of us?
Yeah, our top 3 is unanimous. Mahomes, Jackson, Allen.
All right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think Lamar is a little Jokic-esque, like the statistical GOAT maybe of all time when you look at a lot of indicators that aren't quarterback play necessarily, like how long he's able to hold the ball and how much separation the receivers get because of that, and how boosted their run game is since he's become the starter, right? And the fact that, like, statistically, 2019, his MVP was through the roof from an efficiency perspective. I think last year was the top 5 like QB rating season of all time. Just absolutely insane efficiency metrics when you put Lamar in as the starter. Just like the offense becomes a complete buzzsaw on a per play basis. And it's hard to argue that he's not the best running piece on your team because it's just a 2-for-1, or in the league because it's a 2-for-1 plus all the passing.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think his run game is just on another level. His ability to like manipulate the pocket or stand behind the line of scrimmage and move around and make a play. I mean, like Allen is right there with him. We're obviously splitting hairs, but after the year that Lamar had, even though it went tough in the playoffs, it's hard to deny that, like, man, if Andrews just makes that catch, he probably can come back and maybe get that one done, and then you're talking about a whole different thing. So I agree strongly with, like, I think maybe some of the playoff struggles are just due to small sample size rather than necessarily him being like somehow worse when he gets there, even though there's maybe a bad throw or two in this most recent playoff game. And I admit Allen's been pretty great there too. I thought I don't know, it's dang close, because I think at the end of last year I would have said Allen above Lamar, and that's true for a couple of these other guys where I went back and I sort of reevaluated exactly, like when we get into these next two. I guess I don't know. I think I value Lamar's speed a little bit more than Allen's strength is my new perspective. I think that stresses out a defense more than Allen bowling people over, and it's close. And I think a lot of times people can underestimate how much like a red zone threat or just like a short yardage threat matters. But Lamar is just another level in terms of the rushing.
I think his quickness and the way he solves problems on the fly puts him in Mahomes' tier. I don't agree with Mahomes in the tier by himself, because I think Allen and Lamar are right there in terms of the best in the league. And with Lamar, it's just unbelievable how he's able to make people miss. Like, there's a play against the Bengals that I was watching, and he rolls out to his left, and there's 2 guys pursuing him, and they clearly have the angle. So he pretends like he's about to double back behind the defense, like turn his back to everything and loop all the way back around. He swerves like he's about to do that, and then just shakes him running back to the sideline. It's like, who has the speed to do that, the creativity to do that? The throws where he points in the air while like turning around, like he already knows it's going to be a score. Like, he just is his own planet, I think, when it comes to, like you said, manipulation. Like, it just is, it's different with him than everybody else. And the amount of attention he draws in the run game, like I said, from the linebackers, like, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. The cutback is just always there for Henry in a way that I don't see it be that easy for these Bills running backs, as great as a rushing threat as Josh Allen is. Like, I just think Lamar's a little different, and I seriously considered putting him at number 1.
You do have to account for another gap with Lamar. I will say there's definitely a level of when Lamar Jackson enters like a flow state, I feel like I'm watching the best football player ever.
Seriously.
So like I could definitely get behind like maybe he is in the same tier, because I know there's sometimes like, again, I always think back to 2 seasons ago, the game against the 49ers, where he made Fred Warner look pedestrian, and I'm like, dude, no other quarterback does that, not one. So I don't know. It is close, but yeah, I think I'll keep Lamar at 2, Allen at 3, Mahomes at 1, even though Allen's the MVP.
I do want to talk more about Allen, though, because I feel like I just have talked about him in the context of he's worse than Lamar over the course of the last calendar year.
Which, fair.
I mean, Allen could be number 1 too, though. Like, it's not a terrible take, I think, if you look at Allen and say, man, like, there is nobody with this kind of out of structure ability and ability to just take over. Like, it's his. You go ahead, Matt. I think you're about to spit.
No, I completely agree. I mean, Allen he's right there in terms of just like his ability to go create plays with Lamar. I think he you can make an easy argument for him being better. And I think a lot of the time, the argument against him has been like, okay, well, he's kind of just sloppy with the ball or whatever. He's just like turning it over a ton. And last year that like just wasn't the case as much, and he was a lot more protective. He's got, I think, the single biggest arm in the entire NFL. He can hit throws that other guys can't. And his feel in terms of just like the pocket and rolling out and making plays is like as good as basically anybody's, you know. The only dudes that I would consider maybe above him for that type of stuff are like Lamar and Mahomes. All of these guys are just so rare. And I feel like, you know, while it's easy to say that maybe Allen doesn't steal gaps in the way that Lamar does because he's not that quick, I do think there's something about him sort of getting out of the pocket where you can maybe have like a cornerback or a safety come down and try to get him, and it's like that's just not a very good matchup. And you've got to be so stressed about what he's able to do and who he's able to get past. If it turns out like there's nothing down the field and he just wants to take off, he's a total beast. And I think my big takeaway from this list is we got to get one of these top 5 guys outside of Mahomes a ring at this point, because these dudes are, I mean, they're legendary. And if they go with no rings, it's going to be the only thing you have to talk about with them.
I think they will. I think Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson both have a really, really great chance this next season and the season after that and the season after that. The war is not over. All right. And believing in Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson in the big 2025 is not a delusional take as much as some want to think that everything has been settled, I think. And I also think Allen has more accuracy at this point, like more sheer control over the ball down the field than maybe both Mahomes and Lamar at this point. Like that's one of the things that stands out with him is just how frequently he's able to get the ball in the exact right place in a contested situation, or when he's an inch from the sideline falling out of bounds, like just down the field generally. That's kind of the two holes that are left in Mahomes. That hole hasn't always been there, but it has the past several seasons, his accuracy deep downfield, I think. And then kind of Lamar, the same thing. So yeah, Allen, very, very, very difficult to defend. Very difficult.
Fair enough. Yeah. Maybe Allen just has better receivers to track the ball deep down the field. Maybe that's what.
Nah, that is part of it always, but I don't think it's true with Allen. I do think he's got a little bit more control.
Maybe. But speaking of trying to get one of these top 5 guys a Super Bowl, Jim Harbaugh said that he woke up one morning and decided that he needed to get Justin Herbert into the Hall of Fame. And, you know, I have to say that he's cooking with that because he deserves to. You might as well just give him a gold jacket now. He already deserves.
Yeah, he already is proven enough.
Hypothetically, Justin Herbert does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And this is the topic of discussion of our most recent YouTube video. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do. Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow. Theo, you and I have Justin Herbert above Joe Burrow, and Matt, you have Joe Burrow above Justin Herbert. I guess I shouldn't have spoiled the video, but we're doing our top 10 quarterbacks episode. So if you haven't watched it yet,
it's about to become pretty clear.
It's about to become pretty damn clear. But so the consensus then has Herbert above Burrow by one singular point.
Right. You two have him at 4. I've got him at 5.
Yeah.
I'll repeat generally what I said in the video. Yeah. I think that Herbert, a lot of the hypotheticals are totally fair. People who are unable to accept that like your receiver play will affect your production are just really hard to honestly have any sort of conversation with about QB play, because year in and year out, like what you have around you might change so much with certain guys. And we see every year, like a dude have a great season, and then maybe the next year he doesn't have great players around him. Like his receivers get hurt and he doesn't. I mean, you see with every quarterback in the history of the NFL, including Mahomes, who we just talked about, like if you give him trash receivers, it's going to be tough for him to win MVP. It's going to be tough for him to not have a year where maybe his production is down, or maybe have years where it's like it's tougher for him in the playoffs. And he's Mahomes. So when you talk about guys like Herbert and Burrow, that's definitely true. Of course, having a guy like Chase or T. Higgins, or both of them, makes a big difference. And if Herbert's walking out there with, Johnston and Palmer as his outside receivers, like, yeah, he's at a disadvantage. On top of that, he plays in an offense that just doesn't throw the ball as much, maybe partially because their defense isn't quite as bad, so every game doesn't turn into a 40-point shootout. But
Yeah.
I will say this in defense of Burrow. In spite of all the hypotheticals about Herbert being fair and true, what you do end up saying is basically, hypothetically, if Herbert had those guys, maybe it would be him who's leading in passing yards and passing touchdowns. That's not unfair, but Joe Burrow does actually have those guys and does actually put up those stats and play like that, you know? He is doing what he's supposed to be doing when he has great receivers. And I think, I thought about what if Herbert did have T and Higgins, then he'd probably be putting up relatively similar numbers to Burrow, and we'd be wondering what if Herbert didn't have T and Chase, I should say. Yeah. So you can mention the fact that Herbert has had a worse team than Burrow for a lot of his career, but I think sometimes people take that and then they sort of like internalize, almost like dinging Burrow they almost like take it as like a negative towards Burrow that he has great receivers, maybe even when they don't mean to, and I don't think that's fair. For me though, if we're just evaluating who they are as quarterbacks and not what people say on Twitter, I think Herbert obviously is a more prototypical athlete, I guess, right? Like he's got 20 pounds on Burrow. I think he's a little bit quicker, and he's got one of the biggest arms in the NFL. I'd say maybe like top 3, right? It's pretty crazy. You could argue
Allen.
Yeah, like him and Allen are who I think of. And that allows him to hit throws that are available to like only him and a few other guys. And this isn't like a scouting report about some rookie, right? I mean, he actually does that. He is a surgeon in the pocket. He's like an alien pocket pass, or however you want to describe it. Burrow does not have that arm strength. And because of that, I think sometimes when you're watching Herbert, like he just makes a few more plays. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, you know what I mean? But I think what Burrow makes up for that with is his accuracy and his placement, which I feel like is also top 3 in the NFL. So he can get to really difficult throws in really difficult spots, but he does it in a different way than Herbert. And I think he's just a little bit more aggressive in terms of like being a guy who's going to create and get out of the pocket and get stuff done. And while you would figure that the guy who is more athletic would be better at that, right? I think in practice, Burrow ends up doing it a little bit more. We're splitting hairs. Both these guys are great QBs, but as it stands right now, I think Burrow does a little bit more. It could change going forward. These guys are always still evolving, but I got Burrow.
I think it has changed. I think Herbert used to do that more. Like, I think back to like his rookie and his second year. Like, I mean, the biggest throw that you think of when you think of Justin Herbert is that one against the Giants where he's like rolling to his right, falling forwards and launches it like 60 yards in the air, right? To like Jalen Guyton or Josh Palmer, like one of those guys. But I think a lot of that like aggression is in like confidence in the guys that you're throwing to. And when Joe Burrow has Jamar and Higgins, and like, again, I'm not trying to, use that against Burrow necessarily, but it does help your confidence to be aggressive, to feel like you can be creative and do all this stuff, and your guys are going to be in the position to be ready when you release the football. I don't think Herbert just doesn't have the trust to make those plays happen, I think.
Well, and I think that their aggression shows in different ways. Like, I think Herbert is a lot more aggressive testing downfield zone coverage, and he's a lot more aggressive from the pocket making decisions. I think Burrow's actually pretty unaggressive in those moments. I think he throws short of the sticks a lot. I think he's really
he checks down quickly.
Has a tendency to ignore kind of those routes down the field, and sometimes defenses give them to him. Like I see zone coverages kind of cheat more towards the middle of the field and kind of more downhill, daring him to throw kind of the big outbreakers or something like that. But 100% Burrow is the way he beats that in the zone coverage, and I think the way he makes up for that is I actually think he's a lot quicker than Burrow, like with his feet, but his arm isn't as strong. And so he's able to just kind of dart through the gaps, and he strains the zone coverage with his playmaking, and then he's able to access all kind of those throws downfield that he might not hit so in structure, but because he's started to bend the defense with his scrambling, they're then there for him. And I think the aggression is more or less maybe the same. It just shows in different ways where Herbert is hitting more like zone hole shots than anybody else in the league by far.
He is the best.
He's the best at that.
Thrower. Yeah.
And then Burrow is, one of the just quickest like accelerators and scramblers that there is in the league. And then his accuracy on the move is just incredible. So I think that they're both pretty aggressive downfield, but I think Herbert's a little bit more so from the pocket at least. And yeah, I just think like the numbers between these two are very similar. Like Herbert is the hypothetical one and the one who's never actually done anything. But then when you look at the offenses that these two have led since they were drafted, I mean, the Cincinnati offense since drafting Burrow averages 33.2 yards per drive. For the LA offense, it's 34.4. And then points per drive, it's 2.2 for both of them. So it's one more yard, essentially. Now, Herbert has been healthier over that time, but so I guess I don't know exactly what that looks like, just Herbert and Burrow. But when Burrow missed time, like Browning had a winning record and like had a 70% completion rate. And that's where like Chase and T. Higgins come into it. Where it's like, this is a $75 million receiving core. And Herbert's is like,
I just
pennies.
think that's getting back. I think that's getting back to dinging Burrow for having good receivers.
But what I'm saying is the numbers are the same, but the gap in the receiving core is bigger. So like when you subtract.
True, and Burrow he wasn't like that great his rookie year, whereas Herbert was. But I don't know if that like is relevant in today's argument. And I think, yeah, like, you put any backup quarterback in the Chargers situation, it's probably not going to be that great. Although it's starting to get a little bit better, I think
Definitely.
you could argue.
I mean, they added Ladd. Ladd's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
The offensive line's good.
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
They've got good tackles and
They got good tackles.
We got a comment on that video. I not that I was going and looking through all of them right away, but I did see one comment pop up like he didn't bring up how bad the Bengals offensive line was. And it's true, the Bengals offensive line is pitiful.
I saw that comment too. He ended up replying because I brought up the offensive lines.
Oh, okay.
He was like, Blaiden brought it up, my bad.
I thought I thought the Bengals offensive line is bad, but like the Chargers do not have an elite offensive line or anything that's like totally changing the game for Herbert. But I don't know. I do think looking at the whole career is probably a little bit tough in terms of like what the offenses have output. I just feel like there's too many variables there for that to give you a clean reading, other than both of them have had generally pretty good offenses because they've had generally very elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to gauge. I think they've both had their own slew of issues. Like, obviously, Burrow's had great receivers. And in 2021, they had a really great defense. But since then, they've had terrible defenses. Their offensive line has never been good. Justin Herbert has started his career with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen at kind of the tail end of their primes. And since then, hasn't had a receiver even close to as good as then. He got Ladd this year.
Ladd's better than both.
But up until that point, it was like no one. It was Josh Palmer. It was Quentin Johnston. They went out and brought Mike Williams back because they've had so many struggles with the receivers. But then the biggest issue that I noticed with the Chargers, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, Justin Herbert has had 3 straight offensive coordinator changes over the last 3 seasons. And I do think that has a significant impact on the production and the confidence of that offense.
I think that is one of those things that is just completely unmeasurable, the impact that it has.
Maybe.
Yeah, he goes out there and rips it regardless.
But Burrow's had like the same like offensive play caller for his entire career.
He has,
and like,
but I think Herbert is a bit of a machine learning those things. I think more of the problem is, his offensive coordinators keep getting fired and they're bad. Like,
that's it. This is kind of like not quite on topic, but it is something that gets me frustrated when people are like, "Oh, this young quarterback has gone through all of these offensive coordinators. You have to keep the same guy around." And it's like, first off, the impact of switching offensive coordinators a lot, that sounds like something that's like, yeah, probably bad, but it's completely immeasurable. There's literally no way of possibly knowing. And then I think about a guy like Baker, who was like sort of one of these dudes who's like, oh, he just keeps having these new situations. Well, actually, what the best thing for him was continuing to switch situations until he found the good one. And then that's what changed his career. If he had stayed with Freddie Kitchens for 4 years because you got to keep the same guy, like, I don't think that would have gone nearly as well as what has happened for Baker now. And I think that's true for anybody. The real issue with switching coordinators all the time is that means that you switched out of your coordinator, as in like they were probably bad unless they got hired. So
which the Bengals guys get hired and the Chargers guys get fired.
Right. So that's kind of I'm like, they've just had so many bad offensive play callers, and that's kind of the other thing that I think sticks out. But we have spent a long time talking about Herbert and Burrow, so maybe you guys should just go watch the video.
Maybe. And I will say, how about this though? The best offense so far between the two of them, 2021 Chargers. That's been the peak of both of their careers if you were to combine them. Is Herbert in 2021. Despite,
how about this? Herbert, 0 playoffs.
0 playoffs, yeah, that's true.
He's not good.
We got to start counting Lou Anarumo's playoffs.
And I have nothing to say about the playoffs. Like, I really don't. I just can't
He's played one game, right? He's played like
two games.
Played 2 playoff games. 4 interceptions in the most.
Oh, I'm aware.
That one was really bad, but the one against Jacksonville, I feel like, is the one that gets held over his head more, and I feel like that.
I don't know. I don't know about that, but I mean, it's both were lost in such hilariously bad ways too that I understand factoring it in, but again, like Mahomes is really the only one where I'm like, I know what kind of guy I'm getting in the playoffs. Like, I have full faith. And then maybe Tua is the only one where I'm like, I know that I'm getting something bad in a big game. Like, those are the only two I have strong opinions about, is like big game.
Well, and that's kind of the thing that separates Burrow and Tua is like Burrow can actually create, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I agree. But yeah, just generally, I think Herbert can test down. He's more explosive, more durable. I think just a better pocket passer, I think, generally. But Burrow, best West Coast guy in the league, like, get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. I think that's true about Burrow. If Bill Walsh was still alive, I know who he had as QB1, and it's Burrow. And I think there's still a lot to be said for that in that style. So I like Burrow a lot. I don't want to be just the guy who hates Burrow his entire career, because he's so quick and processing and with his feet. Like, probably in terms of speed at which things happen, he is the fastest. But
and we all agree that, like, these are the top 5 guys: Mahomes, Jackson, Allen, Herbert, Burrow. And the only disagreement is where Herbert and Burrow are placed on that top 5, and it's a 1-spot difference.
I think there's 2 tiers there as well, where I think the top 3 are in their own stuff, and then Burrow and Herbert are put in conversation. Like, they have not been as dominant as those 3 guys. Like, not even close.
I would definitely agree that, like, Burrow and Herbert are probably more in the tier of the 3 guys who I think come after that in that top 5. Like, well, we'll get into the next guy on this list. Matthew Stafford comes in as our consensus number 6, though not unanimously. And I think that's a very reasonable guy to be considered in top 5 conversation. Outside of Patrick Mahomes, this is the guy who, well, him and probably Hurts this is one of the guys with the next best playoff resume. We talk about that 2021 Super Bowl. I mean, the performance that he put up there, but even since then, he's continued to be an exceptional pocket passer, very precise. And he also can do his own little creation, but typically it's with weird arm angles and like contorting his body and hitting no-look passes. That's kind of where he's been finding ways to create from the pocket as opposed to creating on the move. And he's really good at that stuff. Yeah,
I say Burrow's the best West Coast, like, get the ball out quick, type of guy. And then Stafford says not so fast because he's seeing things just as quickly. He speeds up his footwork even at his old ass age to get the ball out as fast as possible. And he's got so many tricks up his sleeve from the pocket. The no looks, just his eyes are such a weapon when it comes to moving guys downfield. And whether it's a no look or he glances back over to the backside, he is doing all kinds of crazy things to move the defenders off their mark.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is somebody who I think, his arm might not be quite the level that it once was. I do think he's kind of starting to wind down. That's no hot take, but I think after the top 5, it starts to get pretty open-ended here. And just with how well put together he is because he's played so much football, I'm probably taking him over anybody else outside of our first 5.
Yeah, it's tempting for me to put him lower because he offers pretty much zero like actual playmaking ability with his legs.
I think
that wouldn't be why I would put him lower. I would put him lower because he's like going on 40.
Right, but what is the effect of that? What is the effect of that? Like to me, it's he's going on 40. He can't really make plays with his legs anymore. That's what I'm saying.
That's true, but I think in the same way that you said that Herbert can be aggressive without necessarily getting out of the pocket, I think Stafford, like if he looks off somebody and opens something up and makes a throw, that's not making a play quite in the same way, but it's still, is kind of making a play and it produces good offense.
100%. Oh yeah, he's a huge playmaker from the pocket, 100%, like Herbert also is. But Herbert, even though he's not consistently slicing through the pass rush gaps like Burrow is, he's still got the like roll out trebuchet arm, like 60-yard downfield on the run type of thing in his bag. Like when he does roll out, like watch out because it's going to be super dangerous and none of his arm strength gets lost. Like Stafford doesn't quite have that, but yeah, I think his game against the Bills this year was the best of any quarterback all year. He still's got all the arm talent to push it outside the numbers. Crazy accurate, tight windows versus man, doesn't matter. Zone, like I said, he'll look you off, he'll layer it, he'll do whatever it takes. Overall this year, the production started to go down a little bit. Like I said a couple episodes ago or a couple months ago, like the Rams offense had way more like low scoring output games than I remembered, like that I thought.
They had a good amount of injuries, didn't they?
They did. And once Puka came back, Stafford had some big games and yeah, specifically that Rams one that Bills one I can't get out of my head.
Yeah, I've been trying to think about what Stafford's the best stat in the league, and I think it's throwing between the hashes. I don't know if there's any quarterback that can like surgically like just put a frozen rope in between 3 defenders, in between the numbers and in between the hashes. I don't know if anyone is better at that than he is, especially with like the way that he can move safeties with his eyes, like you said.
Yeah, to me, weaponizing his eyes is where he's QB1. Maybe Mahomes too. Mahomes is also up there with that, but Stafford is right there.
Yeah, but the guy who we have as consensus 7, I actually had above Stafford on my list, and that is Jayden Daniels, who, Theo, you kept off of your list entirely, which I need your explanation for that, because I think he's easily a top 10 guy.
It's just 1 year. It's just 1 year, and you can kind of separate his season into.
Did you put Stroud on your top 10 list last year?
Yeah, I did. But Stroud's been 2 years of great play, I thought.
But last year, did you put him in your top 10 last year?
I'd put him in my top 10 last year. I mean, we'll get into Stroud. It's just with Daniels. I think Daniels has more training wheels on than Stroud does, first of all.
That's fair.
I think a lot of his production, especially early in the season when his completion percent was so sky high, was a lot of screens, shorter throws. Thought Cliff was doing a nice job scheming those up for him and just keeping him on track. And then in the back half of the year, things started to kind of fall apart for Daniel. Like the sack rate was really high. Like the big plays were going down. Like he did not keep up his pace from the beginning of the year to the end. Like there were some issues. And then the playoffs come and he torches Detroit, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic game. And overall, throughout the course of the season, he did a great job. one of the most dangerous scramblers in the league, like a huge boon to the rushing offense. All that deep ball accuracy translated, so he had the defenses in hell. Natural accuracy, definitely like amazing, but like there just wasn't a stretch of games where I was like, this is as pure and real as like Dak's MVP season, who you also have him above, you must, or Stafford just generally, or Stroud, I think his rookie year and continuing on this year, honestly, like Daniels has not done enough for me to put him over all of these great names who have, I think, done it for longer and accomplished more and just had better seasons.
I will say
in the last 2 years.
The main reason I would put Daniels above Stafford is simply the age aspect of it. Like a part of me is thinking like long term here, like not just who I would want for 1 year, but I'm like, Stafford could retire next year, dude, and Daniels isn't going to retire probably. But I think all the things that you said about Daniels are true as far as like the accuracy, what he brings into the run game. And I think when things did get hard, yeah, you saw him struggle a little bit, but then you saw him kind of recover and overcome those struggles in a way that, you know, we saw Kyler wasn't really able to in the past with Cliff Kingsbury. And so I thought that was a really good sign that he was able to kind of face some of those growing pains and continue to grow and then put on a show in the playoffs. And then, you know, even in games against Philly, he played really, really well, not just against a banged up Detroit defense. I know they lost the NFC Championship game to Philly, but I even thought he looked pretty solid in that game. And it was just a lot of like, he has no run game help. He has one receiver that he can go to, kind of similar situation we talk about with Herbert, or we'll talk about with Dak Prescott, just kind of limited resources at his disposal there. But I think when, you know, things were clicking for him, I was like, those first 4 games, like anyone will tell you that was listening to this show, like we were all like, all of us were talking, maybe less so you, Matt. We were like, yeah, this is fraudulent. We're like 80% completion percentage. We're not buying it. It's very point and shoot. But I thought once that got away, I still think he was a really solid quarterback, even though the numbers weren't quite as good.
Yeah, I think it's not unreasonable to have him a little bit lower because of just like his youth. Maybe if I'm keeping Mahomes at 1, I gotta zoom out a little bit and do the same, right? Sure. But I think Daniel's rushing ability is incredibly important. It's incredibly good. I mean, it's like up there with basically like Lamar in terms of like just how much he can use it. And I do think you can underrate that a little bit. I think it's possible. It's true that maybe he wasn't as strong towards the end of the season, but I thought he did get to a point where the offense was realer than it was through the first 4 games. Certainly, if you're throwing 80% completion percentage, it's either fake or you're actually like doing that, and it's just like a phony offense. You know, like nobody's completing 80% of their passes naturally, like being aggressive and going downfield or whatever. But I think Daniel's accuracy, like the thing is that like also Daniel's accuracy is amazing. It is really good. It is a huge strength. And I thought there were times where he was hitting throws over the middle of the field and accessing later reads at times. And if that part of his game comes around and like if he builds on that year too, which like maybe we should be expecting a sophomore slump off of the basis of that's just always what seems to happen. Like even with guys like Stroud or whatever, you know, did Herbert have a sophomore slump?
No, that was the greatest year. That was the 2021 year.
He's the GOAT.
Oh, right.
Maybe a junior. Well, he hasn't really ever slumped, you know.
He came in a pro. He's totally
perfect and beautiful and wonderful.
Cam Newton had a sophomore slump. I don't know. It's obviously very.
It happens. I mean, it happens most of the time.
And I think you know one take that you've had, Theo, is that he's going to have a sophomore slump. I think you should start prefacing that, because I don't even necessarily disagree that it's impossible. Like I think it's reasonable to think that's in the wheelhouse, especially with like a Cliff Kingsbury offense. You should preface it with like that doesn't necessarily mean that he's actually bad, you know, but like maybe in terms of just like what the expectations are for next year, let's let's not do the same thing with Stroud where it's just like the assumption is maybe that he's going to take a huge step and like the progress is going to be linear, because it's really hard to pull that off. But yeah, I don't know. I just really valued his rushing ability. Maybe I'm overrating him because he made the conference finals, but or conference champion.
You know what his passing EPA was past week 10? It was negative 22.7. Anthony Richardson was negative 26.1. That's the next guy after Daniels. Rodgers was right before him, negative 22.4.
Do you think that Anthony Richardson and Jayden Daniels are in the same spot?
I don't think they're in the same tier whatsoever. I think Daniels is a lot better, but I also think that the natural accuracy that Daniels possesses, Geno also possesses, who I have above him. And I think I'm not so much worried about that being something that's a small sample size, like I just think the sacks did start to rear up a little bit more towards the end. I think he's not quite as good operating against zone, like looking people, like doing all these pro level things as a rookie than some of the guys that you are putting below him at this point, Blaiden. So I really like Jayden Daniels had a fantastic year, and I think that he's going to be have a great career, a franchise guy in Washington, 100%. But there's a lot of quarterbacks that I really like that I didn't put in my top 10. There's more than 10. Kyler, I really like. He's not in my top 10. Trevor Lawrence, I really, really like. I didn't put him in my top 10,
I mean, I was stunned to look at the spreadsheet and not see Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence was tough to keep off the top 10. Like,
seriously. So there's just a lot of good guys, and I think Daniels, like, to put him at 6, like, man, you're just completely buying that. Like, it's not even last year was real, but like last year's almost the floor of what he could do. Like, it's just going to be Lamar from here on out, I think.
I mean, I think if we're looking at like who he compares most to, like, I think he's basically Burrow with like more athleticism. Like, if he is as good as I think he can be, like, then yeah, he probably should be top 3 going forward. But
the Burrow kids comp is kind of interesting for him because I do think they kind of approach the game in a similar way. But again, Burrow's, I just think, operates at a much quicker level.
They take a similar number of sacks too.
Yeah.
I can see the take that maybe Daniels, as they put more on his plate, statistically kind of backslides a little, but overall the long-term outlook for him is very good. I think I could get behind that as the take, but I do like him long-term, and
I like him too. I
think an accurate guy who can run like he can. The main concern I really have with him, because I think he's the type of dude where it's like, okay, as long as you just like keep getting him out there, I feel like if you keep getting him reps with the skill set that he has, I think expecting improvement is completely reasonable. I'm not saying everybody always gets better necessarily given enough time, but I would say a lot of guys do. And Daniels, I think, has showed, like, I think he was better than he proved his last year in college, and then I think he was kind of, better, this first year or whatever. So I don't know. I think the outlook for him.
I think the outlook for him is very rosy. I just need him to speed up his internal clock a little bit while taking on more of a workload, and he'll be there. And if he is, maybe he is plus Burrow. I mean, he really could be super special. So yeah, I'm not anti Daniels. I don't think that it's just a little hasty. That's all. It's just a little hasty. I'm slow to change, guys. I don't like changing Trevor Lawrence. 2020, what year was he good? 2022, 2021.
I still 2018.
It's still like that's kind of who I think he is, and even though the caliber of year and the stat sheets are all the same,
Hey man, Burrow, I'm still hanging on to Matt Corral.
You're still hanging on to Matt Corral, but I think that's proven to be valuable for me, as stubborn as some think I am. Like last year, leaving Purdy off this list would have been a disaster on Twitter, right? Because he just got to the Super Bowl.
That's true.
And this year, leaving him off the list will be completely a non-issue, right? Everybody's like, it feels like the consensus around these guys are very quick to change.
That's true.
I thought we left Purdy off the list, didn't we?
Oh, 100% we did. I'm on the pen.
I was going to say, did we put Purdy top 10 last year?
I don't know, Blaiden. This is at 4 because that's what it would have taken.
No, I did not put him on my top 10. So.
I thought this time, I will say, I thought this year's top 10 was harder than last year's. I was struggling coming up with this one, where I feel like we've done this year's priors and it hasn't been as tough. I think after you get past the top 5, and then I was like, okay, Stafford has seniority. I can put him at 6. And I was considering him like maybe for top 5 earlier in the year. And then he didn't have like the craziest year ever. After that, dude, I think it's wide open. Because I think most of these dudes are either guys who produced great, but I still have questions about in terms of like what they're actually like out there doing, or they're guys who I feel like have a pretty well-rounded game, but then like the production hasn't quite been there yet. Anyway, let's get to the next one.
Next guy is Dak Prescott. Dakota Rain himself. Yeah, man, the quarter Dak. I'm very torn on where to put Dak. I did not end up putting him in my top 10 at all, mostly just because, like you said, Matt, I think it's difficult. And the main issue that I've kind of come around with Dak is he gets hurt a lot.
You know, that's not totally unreasonable. I guess I didn't really take that into account on my list, and maybe I have in years prior and I'm being inconsistent or whatever. But like, yeah, the injury stuff is starting to mount up for him. And the other thing is like, luckily the Pickens trade happened this morning, because I was sitting here last night. I'm like, you could put Dak high, but it might just be one of those things where it's like, the circumstance is never going to get to the point where like that ends up like paying out for you, you know?
It's like he had the MVP caliber year in 2023, and he played 8 games this year. He played 12 games the year before that. 2 years before that, he played 5 games. So it's just like, I don't know, man. I think it's just like I think he's good. Like, I don't want Cowboys fans to think I'm out here just like hating on Dak, but it's just like you said, Matt, I don't know if it's ever I just don't know if it's ever going to work out for him. I really don't.
Has Pickens. I have a little bit more hope.
Sure. They still don't have a run game or the ability to stop the run or have a non-meddling owner. But yeah,
that's not Dak's fault though.
No, it's not Dak's fault. But in terms of like it working out for him, we're talking in
terms of like winning the war on Twitter.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think Dak is as good as there is. I mean, I think he's somebody who wants to spread out the offense and be a pure, quarterback. If I'm concerned about Daniels not having enough on his plate, like maybe Dak has too much. With how much is asked of him and the weapons that he's got, and the freedom he has at the line of scrimmage, and all the things that came with being in McCarthy's offense, like that, and that's how he wants to be. That's how he wants to play it, and he's hyper aggressive with all those routes downfield, and I think he's one of the top pocket passers in the league for that reason. I think he's crazy aggressive as well downfield, testing zone coverages, trying to layer balls. Attack in the middle of the field between the safeties is he's another one that I think is one of the best between the numbers. So just in general, and I really respect his play style. His pocket presence has been super consistent over the course of his career, moves around it well, doesn't take a ton of sacks. That plus the aggressiveness, that's a lot of the guys in my top 10 is guys kind of with that skill set. I trust them to move around the pocket. I trust them to be really aggressive versus the zones. And they can create a little bit for themselves as well. Like that's kind of the formula that I really like. And I think Dak checks all of those boxes pretty much perfectly, except for when he gets hurt or they start bracketing CD to an insane extent last year and no one else can create an inch of separation. And then he just gets, then the Guyton experiment doesn't work out and he's just getting pummeled. And
which like, I feel bad because I'm like, none of this stuff is his fault, like he's kind of Herbert in that sense.
Not his fault.
Not his fault, because it's not like it's not like he doesn't take care of himself. I mean, you've seen his warm up routine. He's very surgical with all that stuff. He's very technical. It's just like, oh yeah, his ankle shatters. What are you supposed to do about that? He's
kind of tier 3 Herbert.
Tier 3.
Like you have to go on Twitter and be like, guys,
who's tier 2 Herbert?
Herbert.
Who's tier 1?
I'm just saying Herbert's. I mean, we said what?
You're saying Herbert's.
yes,
I thought you were saying like of Justin Herbert's. He's
No,
I thought you were
no.
talking about the particles. Yeah.
yeah.
No, he's given he's tier 2 particles, but that makes him tier 3 Herbert. You have to
Okay.
understand. I just don't. He doesn't have quite the arm of Herbert, but I agree. Like he's just a very well put together, aggressive pocket passer. I think his supporting cast and his team does let him down more than he lets them down. I'm excited with him and Pickens. I think there's a chance they could. I think there's a chance
There is
that
a
Dak
chance.
could put up some good numbers, and that's like what I think I can hope for with the Cowboys.
They got Dak and Micah and CD still.
Yeah.
It's still formidable, but yeah, still a lot of
We still
weaknesses.
have Trevor Diggs and
Trevor.
They're good.
our next quarterback, number 9, is C.J. Stroud, the Buckeye.
Yeah, CJ Stroud has a 9 is I think value for him. Like I think he could be higher than this if the line didn't completely deteriorate in front of his eyes every play last year. And even last season, I know statistically he was so down. He had some bad games for sure. But man, some of the stuff he did on 3rd and long was like, this is so legit. Like this guy is unconscious.
He was really trying in some of
yeah.
those playoff games too. Like he was working his ass off. And it's also worth noting that like the receiver situation ended up getting pretty dire at points during last year. Not only did he have, I mean, one of the worst offensive line performances that I can remember. I truly would like to know where it ranks. Maybe I'm overestimating that because they were like
all time
good. I don't know. An all-time bad offensive line is one thing, but it felt particularly bad. There's bad offensive lines all over the league, but they were on another level, it felt like. But on top of that, like there was games where he didn't have Collins and Tank Dell got hurt, and it's like, man, there's just not a lot of strengths out here outside of Stroud. He did take a ton of sacks, and I think sometimes he can get himself into sacks like on his own for sure, but obviously the situation that he was in shares a good portion of the blame for that.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out just how many, what the target share looked like for the receivers last year. Nico Collins had 99 targets, Dalton Schultz 85, Tank Dell 81, Diggs 64, Joe Mixon 52, John Mechie 37, Robert Woods 30, Dare Ogun, you know what? I give up. 28
You're doing
targets.
it to yourself, even mentioning his name.
I did do it to myself. Xavier Hutchinson had 26, and then Cade Stover had 22. I don't know where that ranks among like target shares in the NFL, but I feel like that's a pretty wide range of guys.
Oh yeah, because they had a lot of
more than
injuries,
20 targets.
I mean, if things were, if Collins was playing a full season, he's seeing like 150, 100
exactly
targets or whatever,
yeah.
right? Not that he's got like the worst receiver room in the world, and we'll see how the Texans are this year. But yeah, I think I was a little bit too low on Stroud on my list. There were points in the season where it just looked like everything wasn't working on that, and maybe I was blaming him a little bit too much for just like the pressure situation being bad. Of course, when you're throwing under pressure more, your results are going to be worse.
Yeah,
with Stroud.
I don't necessarily see it as like a knock on Stroud. I more look at it as like he stayed the same, and I just felt strong. I felt more confident saying that like, oh, Jayden Daniels had was really really good, or like Stafford was really really good. Like you mentioned that Bills game, like Stroud didn't have a game like that this year where I can be like, oh yeah, dude, he's on one. And maybe by that logic, I should have Burrow above Herbert too. But what are you gonna do?
I mean, I certainly think that there are some things for Stroud to improve upon, and I think his risk mitigation last year was bad on top of the line, or not bad, but had questionable moments, where he was like, look at the check down, dude, like time to get off that read. Like, why are you forcing that? Why did you throw that in the first place? Like, there's definitely points like that where he's trying to be too much a hero, but I like those moments, honestly. And that's one of the most forgivable things, I think, is when you're trying to be too much of a hero, because like all of a sudden the line starts to get a little bit better. And those are the types of things that make you stand out all of a sudden. And again, I think you saw that on third down and longs with him, where it's like, man, he's really capable of putting the team on his back and bailing them out of Laramie Tunsil penalties and bailing them out of just these horrible moments that other people have. Like, pay him $1 billion because he can actually overcome, the $1 million rookie right guard. That's not going to sink the offense or anything like that,
Right.
because he can do so many things to overcome it. But yeah, he was definitely there's definitely a low light cut up you could make of him that's a lot more ugly than some of these other guys.
I think that's what made me put him a little bit too low on my list. It's just like how much you blame him for that versus the situation around him. And is he trying to do more because he needs to do more? I will say I do think I value like not making the blunders, especially when it's like racking up a ton of sacks or whatever, or holding the ball too long, maybe a little bit more than you. But I do think in general, like being boom or bust as a quarterback and being able to do great things, even if you make great mistakes, is a good thing. And I'm a little worried, like if we're thinking about just this year, it's like, will this narrative pay off that actually it's like, is Stroud going to have some huge bounce back year? I think he'll still be a good quarterback. I'm worried about the Texans offensive line, and we'll see about the receivers. Collins is still there, of course. So I'm hoping it's a little bit better this year, but I got my concerns that the O-line might reap.
Oh yeah, I got my concerns that pushing like big Stroud narratives might not look great for a while because of the stats. But again, my opinion is you gotta fight through those.
You should. You're totally right.
Hard times. I don't care. I don't care about the hard times.
I'm just saying. Forecast calling for rain.
I'm ready. I'm batting down the hatches. It's nothing new.
Theo's built for this. He's a strong man. Don't worry. And to finish things off, our 10th best quarterback in the NFL right now is Jalen Hurts, the man who always gets better. And at this point, his superpower is, as we've talked a number of times, his kind of pre-snap processing and everything that he does to kind of, coordinate the offense at the line of scrimmage, his line calls, and reading the defense and getting everyone kind of in the right place to kind of succeed. A lot of guys are great after the snap, and Jalen Hurts does a lot after the snap also. And he's got, of course, the 600-pound squat that makes the tush push so unstoppable, and everyone wants to ban it. But I think it's the pre-snap stuff that really kind of sets him apart and puts him at number 10 on this list, which does leave Geno Smith off the list, but it's really close.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Hurts is someone I put at 10. And maybe I'm giving him the Super Bowl boost there because they did have like one of the least productive straight drop back passing games in all of football. But they did have Saquon. So how much of it is, well, we want to take the ball out of Hurts' hands, and how much of it is, well, we want to put the ball in Saquon's hands.
Imagine if Saquon didn't have Hurts, bro. How about that? Flip it on its head. I mean, yeah, they had Saquon. I don't think that I like to view the Saquon move in a vacuum, actually. Like, it was just a good play to get a great running back for $7 million a year, regardless of who you had at QB. Like, okay, did the Ravens get Derrick Henry because they needed to get the ball out of Lamar Jackson's hands? No, I think they just wanted a really talented runner, because having a talented runner to pair with a talented rushing threat quarterback, I feel like not only is just like obviously good, but like kind of maximizes both of them and stresses the defense even more in one particular area. The same is true for the Eagles. Hurts is a monster running the ball. He is a threat to keep it. His power is undeniable. When we talk about guys who are like great in the red zone, I mean, Hurts, and of course the offensive line too, are just so good for the Eagles that they have almost gotten what they do banned, because it's so unstoppable in short yardage and goal line situations. That's valuable, man. There's plenty of teams that are good but struggle in the red zone. And when you have a power quarterback who can alone just kind of like prevent that from happening, like it's a massive deal. Not to say that Hurts does it alone, I guess, but
yeah, I mean,
I always think
Bills tried
about
to do it a lot too, and they're not nearly as successful. They were successful.
No, not on the same level that the Eagles are.
Yeah, not even close.
And Hurts does have a lot of other good parts of his game. He's still lower on this list. I feel like, maybe Eagles fans, of course, but like some fans would probably have him higher than 10. I don't think that Hurts like hits the second or third option once the play is started as well as a lot of these other guys. He holds the ball for a very long time. I don't know if his pocket awareness is quite on the level of everybody else's. I think his like creation ability is a little bit more like sometimes just sort of getting out of there rather than like, I don't know, rolling and manipulating the pocket or whatever, like some of these other top dudes. And of course, like him having a great supporting cast does help him. I to the point where should we sit here and say, well, he won the Super Bowl, so he's the best quarterback? Like, of course not. Like the game doesn't work like that. But we can also point to his good traits and I think reasonably call him a top 10 guy.
Yeah. I think he definitely has limitations. I don't think he's just as quick getting through the reads and layering the ball against the zones like I like. He's just not that kind of quarterback though, but he's so accurate down the field. I know he's got A.J. Brown, and I think A.J. Brown is as good as it gets, but Hurts puts it in the right spot there. But then you also need to play one high to get the extra guy in the box to account for him. I think his pocket presence and feel for space is actually pretty good. I just think he's hesitant for whatever reason to get rid of the ball, but like he does a nice job like slipping through the gaps in the pass rush and getting out on the perimeter, getting downhill to run. Like he does all those things pretty well. It's just he's not someone who's a real champion from the pocket like some of the guys maybe above him. But that doesn't matter. I mean, his style won the Super Bowl, like it is a good archetype to have.
It works
clearly.
a little at least.
It works a little at least.
He could be a two-time Super Bowl champion easily here,
Yeah. I mean, if a one play difference a couple years ago, I do think that, part of him not being as good at getting to his second read, or Theo, like you say, maybe being hesitant. I think that just it kind of ties into like how important it is with his pre-snap stuff, because it's all just like, well, this is what it is, right? Like I'm calling, this is what we're doing, and if it's not there, oh well. But normally it is there, because he's done such a good job of just like knowing what look he's getting. So I'm interested to see kind of how defenses and some of the top defensive coordinators try and counteract that, try and throw him some unique looks. Specifically Spags, if they see, they should play this year, right? In the regular season, Chiefs, Eagles, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know.
But I think it would be interesting to see how Spags would play Jalen Hurts again this time. Just kind of based on how he handles things pre-snap.
It's hard because just Saquon dictates so many things. Like you can try to spin the coverage, but if you're spinning the coverage, you're eventually going too high. If you're spinning the coverage, you're either going from 1 to 2 or you're going from 2 to 1. And if you're too high at any point, you're giving Saquon Barkley space. So it does dictate, like the run threat of Hurts and the offensive line and Saquon. The Eagles still see about more man coverage than just about anybody, even though their weapons are so good.
Because you have to.
Because you have to. And so there is no answer for these defensive coordinators because man isn't good to play. They've got A.J. Brown and they've got Devontae Smith. So that's a shitty coverage to play, but they have to do it. They can't like dictate too much to Hurts and confuse him because they're worried about the run game so bad. And that's how it was in 2022 and that's how it was in 2024. And yeah, I mean, just like, Burrow and his $75 million receiving core.
Yeah.
Hurts benefits so greatly from his situation, 100%. And maybe he's not really number 10. I guess I can't tell. But like at this point, I'm like, I'm not sure who I can put above him. I mean, maybe Jayden. But I think Hurts and Jayden are kind of similar. And Hurts just won it, and he's been doing it for a long time. And again, I just want to see a little bit more from Jayden. And then there's like Kyler, who's injury prone and hasn't been super consistent any year of his career, although I do think that he's pretty electric. And
yes,
there's Lawrence, obviously, who I adore, and I would love to see him in the Eagles situation instead of Jacksonville. But, he's not as accurate as Hurts. And there's Geno, who I did put above Hurts.
Geno was the next man out. I had Hurts at 9 and Geno at 10. But that's not how the consensus ranking played out. So Geno Smith, I think would be a very reasonable guy to keep in this top 10. I think he's got Theo, I think you mentioned it earlier. He's got kind of that high level accuracy that you look for from the pocket. I think he's going to be really good with the Raiders. I'm
perhaps the most accurate. Like, I think Burrow would get the most accurate label, but I think Geno pushes it a little bit farther down the field, and his catchable ball rate was unbelievable. I think it was first in the league last season, despite such a high average depth of target. And then Burrow and Daniels were really the only ones who could kind of match that sort of aggressiveness with that sort of accuracy. So Geno's 100% in the conversation for most accurate, and he keeps all the aggressiveness. Like he's also really good between the hashes. Like think about those seams versus Tampa 2 when he's got to get it over that pull runner in between the two safeties. Like he does that all the time. He's quite good. I think he maneuvers the pocket well and has a really slow heartbeat in there, despite all the sacks that he took. I like the way he goes about it. PFF had Geno as the second lowest, or maybe it was the lowest quarterback in terms of percentage of sacks that he's responsible for in terms of their charting. And I think that passed my eye test.
Not his fault.
They had it not. That is not his fault rating, which the most important statistics to have is not his fault rating. But it's not Geno's fault a lot of the time. Wish he didn't have so many red zone turnovers last year that were dumb, but he did.
But it's not his fault,
But it's not his fault. Some of them were, some of them weren't. But I still think that he's about as good as it gets playing the quarterback position, and it's been that way since he took over in Seattle, I think. So the sample size has gotten large enough for me to trust Geno.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So that's the top 10. I'll run through it one more time before we get out of here. Number 1, Mahomes. Number 2, Lamar. Number 3, Josh Allen. Number 4, Justin Herbert. Number 5, Joe Burrow. Number 6, Matt Stafford. Number 7, Jayden Daniels. Number 8, Dak Prescott. Number 9, CJ Stroud. And number 10, Jalen Hurts is our consensus top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. Remember, as we said at the beginning, these are divine rankings, so you're not allowed to disagree with them. And then if you haven't already, make sure you check out the Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow roundtable discussion that we put out Wednesday morning. But unless you guys have anything else, I'll send the good people on their way.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, from your favorite fellas here at Stay Hot, we will catch you on the flippity flop.